Hey everybody, and welcome to Honeybee Entertainment. I'm your Coach B, and today we're going to be exploring the question, is Juno actually good now? Well, I think we need to start our discussion with BlizzCon 2024, when they first gave us a sneak peek at Juno. Myself, someone that has made both Echo and Pharah in the past, I was ecstatic to hear that we were going to be getting a flying support. And so when the playtest actually came around, myself and others were somewhat disappointed because she felt sort of clunky. Her glide boost did not have vertical movement. Her double jump provided that vertical movement, but it didn't really feel like they came together in the same way that an Echo flight or Pharah's boosters or even a Mercy flight felt. And so when we finally got Juno, most of the community was really hoping that we were going to get some tweaks to the glide boost, maybe some vertical movement, or at least the ability to go down. That was what a lot of people were hoping for, was the ability to crouch and bring yourself down. Not go up higher, but go down. So when it finally did come around, what did we get? Well, nothing for the glide boost, actually. The only thing that we got was down here that Juno now, when she hits level, architecture will be adjusted better, which basically meant that if your head was going to bop on something, it would push you down, and if your chest was going to hit on something like the top of a bridge, it was more reliant or more reliable at pushing you up on top of the bridge. So it was something, right? But let's just jump right into the patch notes. Actually, when she was released, they reduced her health from 250 to 225, which definitely made her feel a bit squishier. Along with the changes to the Medi Blaster, and that kind of took away some of her lethality, but we will jump more into that in a little bit here. Other than that, pretty standard changes across the board. The deployment range and the cooldown reduction for the Hyper Ring was extremely important, and I think that they could even go perhaps a little bit shorter with the Hyper Ring cooldown. But the deployment range and the cooldown are totally in a good place, and I think those were great adjustments that they made. The Pulsar torpedoes, they increased the hit damage, or the damage upon impact. However, they reduced the healing over time slightly by 10, which myself, I kind of wish that they would have done that a little bit differently for healing, at least. I feel like the healing over time is a pretty cool aspect to the ability, and would allow for some different pre-fight setup with your ability. But then the orbital ray, they increased that movement speed, which was somewhat of a hot topic after the playtest. A lot of people wanted it to be slower. A lot of people were talking about maybe it being centered on Juno, but in the end, this is what we got, and since we've been playing with it, I can say that I've gotten used to it, and I'm pretty comfortable with it and happy with how it plays. And again, we'll get a little bit more into how all of these work in a little bit later here. But the saving grace for Juno was just a little bit after that, we got a hot patch, and what did they do? They reverted the fire rate, which that right there, this was the biggest thing that just took away from Juno. Her movement still felt pretty good, but the Medi Blaster, you just weren't doing enough damage. You weren't having enough DPS. And so just, the way numbers work, I'll go into it real quick. Essentially what happened was she was doing 96 per volley beforehand, and they reduced the amount of, how many shots you're getting off per second, which what they ended up doing was reverting back to the original fire rate, but then they reduced the damage slightly. So you're actually doing 90 per burst now. So you're doing 6 less, but your DPS is higher overall. It wasn't even just a numbers thing. It was a feel thing and a tempo thing that I think this alone is the single biggest change that they have made to this character overall. So, where do we go? I'm going to jump on to Overwatch fandom. They just do a fantastic job. There's a lot of hidden stuff about the character that is not written anywhere, but is really important if we're going to be talking about how the character truly performs. So Juno has the roll passive for support, so the healing kicks in quicker. Her double jump, which also will give her a falling speed, or like a glide boost, like Mercy or Echo. They have that slow fall. The Medi Blaster, a couple of important things. It's a burst weapon. It shoots off 12 shots per round. There's no headshot multiplier, and your fall off range is 30 to 50 meters. So you really sit nicely in that close to mid range. You can take some duels and close that distance, or make space and feel comfortable. However, you're really going to struggle at range. But cool thing about that is this is the first time that we've had a character that has fall off damage on their healing, or fall off healing, I should say. Pulsar torpedoes. Important things here. You're going to be doing 85 damage when you hit a target, and that goes for healing and damage. However, the healing will have an additional 50 over time. The lock-on obviously is going to be anywhere from 1 to 4 seconds, and you have a maximum range of 40 meters. The important thing in all of these details that I love that they have these here, is one, the cooldown. You can see it in game, but the cooldown is reduced to 2 seconds if you don't target anyone or start lock-on on anyone. This is really, really important. Juno must have visible line of sight with the target, but if they go... Oh, wait, that's not it. If the target leaves Juno's line of sight, and then come back in, it will be paused, and then you'll continue locking on. So there's definitely cases where you want to just hold, and wait for that target to pop out. They think you're good. Nope, you have enough time to lock on and get that 85 damage off on them. This is a little stuff. I would recommend you come and look at this yourself, but what all of this right here is essentially saying is the different combinations it has with abilities. The important one, in my opinion, being that if you lock onto a Sombra before going invisible, when they uncloak, the projectile will hit them. So if you can lock on before they throw their translocate and maybe get a single shot off on them, you can hit them with that pulse. So that feels good. Glide boost. The important things here, the ability works exactly like we've talked, but important things here would be that there's no vertical component. However, the player can still gain or reduce altitude by gliding against slanted terrain. The other important thing is that they're right here. As a result, she cannot crouch while gliding, and jumping will count as the double jump, which means that if you're on the ground and you dash, all you get is your double jump. So if you're looking for max height with the glide boost, you're going to want to jump, glide boost, and then jump again. That's going to give you the highest. That's going to get you the highest. Next is the hyper ring. Which the important things here is allies within 5 meter radius of Juno or the projectile's path will gain the speed boost even if they don't pass through the ring. So a couple things there would be like coming out of spawn. I'm pretty guilty of this one, but coming out of spawn, you should try to let your team just go right in front of you, shoot the ring through them in front of them, That way it's quick, but they're gonna get a couple more seconds of that boost. And additionally, if you are, not on an angle where you can shoot in front of your teammate, you can just shoot it at them. So always keep that in mind. The other thing is that it does stack with your glide boost, and it will put you up to the full 75% movement speed cap that you can get. Orbital Ray, you get 100 healing per second, a 35% damage amplification, and it lasts for 10 seconds. Big things here, obviously the ray travels 22.5 meters over its whole duration. It goes through all barriers, walls, ceilings, floors, and it has a casting time. That's a pretty important part. There's a casting time, so you can get stunned out of your casting time, you can get hacked out of your casting time. But the way that the ult is cast is you hit your little keyboard on your wrist, and you call in that ray. And during that casting time, whichever direction you are facing, when the casting time is finished, is the direction that your ult is going to go. So if you're in the middle of a fight, you can hit your ult and quickly snap to where you want it to be in that second. And so just know that you have that little bit of grace period to realign where you actually want it to go. And talking about this going through the orbital ray going through walls, that reminds me with Hyper Ring. The ring also will go through walls and floor if it can, and those anywhere on that ring, even the side of the ring, will give that speed boost. So there's some cheeky places where you can shoot it at stairs or at a corner and kind of get multiple people both inside and outside a room and give them that boost. So let's jump into the game and just give a quick overview of what we're actually looking at. So we got our double jump. I'm actually gonna turn sound on real quick because I think it's cute. You want to hear all the sounds. So this is your ult. It moves forward like this. You can see on your screen you're getting the damage amplification. Double jump acts exactly like you think, and you can hover as you go down. Your glide boost, I'll kind of show here. I'll double jump and then I'll go forward. I can't go up or down. I'm stuck on this one plane here. My pulsar torpedoes, there's a lock on, and then a fire. And there's obviously travel time between you and the target. And what that means is that, let's see if I can actually do it. I'm gonna lock onto this guy, and right as I shoot, oh, well, it's easier with moving targets. If they move behind a wall, it'll hit the wall. But a pretty important thing is with allies, your allies will still get healing even if they go behind the wall, or break line of sight before the projectile reaches them. And then here we have our healing, our allies, and don't have to swap or anything. We can do damage with the same projectiles. And Hyper Ring. Obviously, I have the speed boost already. You can kind of see from all the lines on my screen. And I'm going to walk through the ring, and I'm going to get it again. And so that's the way it would work. Just like I get the effect, if I shoot my ring through somebody or they're standing within 5 meters of me when I cast it, they are all going to get the speed boost, just like Juno did there, even though she didn't go through the ring. Yeah. All right, so that's our ability overview and a little history. Let's really focus in, though, on some of the more important things, which, in my opinion, the really important thing is this. The fire rate, the nerf of the fire rate on release, and then the reversion. Biggest thing about the character. When she was released, she did not really feel strong. The movement, they did some things to try to fix, the way it works with doors and ledges and stuff like that. However, it's still, even today, I think if your expectation is, looking and comparing to Echo, that was my first thing. Is, oh, glide boost, just like Echo. It's somewhat of a letdown, and I think that's honestly, it was just a lot of people were expecting Juno to be a little bit more vertical, have a little bit more free flight, and that turned some people off from her. And I think furthermore, upon release, she just was doing so little damage that she couldn't really fend for herself, and she became a liability almost, because she was so susceptible to dive, couldn't take 1v1s, was pretty much always just running, and since she was always running, her glide boost was always on cooldown, and her hyper ring was also almost always on cooldown, because you have to use it just to save yourself. So them changing this, changing the fire rate, adjusting the numbers slightly, really brought Juno from what would have been maybe like low B tier, C tier upon release, up to A tier. But I think a larger thing that people just don't talk about is the fact that we have had all this time to play the character. We know how to play the character, where we don't know how to play the character during the play test. And so a lot of the things that people were getting away with during the play test with her mobility, and the reason that some people thought overpowered, some people thought underpowered, was that people were just kind of jumping up, using their glide boosts, just going side to side, and maybe get off their pulsars, do some damage, and she could feel really, really pokey. And her movement, again, it didn't feel good, right? It felt kind of funky, but at the same time, nobody knew how to shoot Juno yet. So after getting to, play against her for a few weeks, already people have understood, okay, Juno's stuck on one plane. Maybe if she uses her double jump, she can go up higher. But then all I have to do is set my crosshair at that right level and move left and right. So when you took away her ability to do damage, what that really led to was the whole character kind of losing identity, because she couldn't be aggressive. And that's what this change allowed. It allowed her to start to take space of her own and go on angles and actually try to contribute to what was happening, instead of just sitting back and shooting people, almost playing like an Ana. I think that's kind of how a lot of people found themselves playing with Juno, was just sitting behind the team, doing damage, as you're just kind of shooting, and whether your projectiles are hitting your allies or the enemies in front of them, you're just whatever. So into a real map now, and I'll just take a little time to discuss the misunderstood playstyle of Juno, and a little bit about how she should be played and about her abilities. We've kind of already discussed how both the Medi Blaster and her glide boost have kind of been aspects of the character that might turn people off from her, or have, I should say, and sort of just tied into this general kind of idea that she isn't good, even though I think now people really are starting to wake up to this. The problem that she had mainly was that people just didn't understand where she fit. And I understand that, because she has a weird kit. All of her abilities seem pretty easy on face value. A glide boost sounds easy enough. You hit your movement ability, it moves you forward. Easy enough. Double jump, also pretty simple, self-explanatory. Pulsar torpedoes, they work really, really simplistically. And I would also say that they feel good to play around. I think that generally the community has agreed that getting locked on by a Juno doesn't really feel like oh man, it's such an unskillful play, because there's a large auditory cue. On top of that, it is fairly easy to dodge just by poking behind cover. Even like we talked about before, about waiting for someone to come back around the corner, all it really takes is for them to go around the corner again before the projectile hits them, and they're still safe. So we've got all these, the ring. I have to say the ring is, I think, the biggest part of her kit, but also the least understood, and it's not quite as self-explanatory as the rest. The easy way to look at it is it's a free movement speed buff for her. Upon using it, you're going to get speed. And that alone is huge. You can, throw your boost off, and you can run this way and reset really quickly. So if you had somebody down in there in the choke, you could throw that down, boost them out, while also simultaneously leaving. I think the problem is that it's, like I said, it's just not self-explanatory. Do you use it in front of people? Do you use it behind people? There's a lot of decisions, and how you use it is really what I think will make someone a good Juno player and really say that she is a good character. So, how can we better use our abilities? Well, let's jump right with the hyper ring, since that was what we have already been talking about. I already kind of alluded to a couple of them. The first one being, you can just shoot your ring right on people. Your team is fighting here in the choke, shoot it right here. Give your tank, give your supports, whoever might be holding this little choke, this little corner here, give them speed. They can sit there and they can go in and out of the ring, and they're going to have that speed boost. It's going to give them a little bit of an advantage, kind of moving to avoid damage, and also it allows them to pull out quicker, get behind the corner a little bit quicker. The next place would be, again, shooting it almost on people. If I have a tank that I know needs to leave and has not left yet, I'm shooting this here, and I'm using that advantage to take this time to move over here. I can reset, pick a new angle, while hopefully that tank is going to take advantage of the speed I've just given them. Now, I talked earlier about being forced to use the hyper ring a lot in order to get away. And I think that still exists in Juno's playstyle. You sort of have to understand that the speed ring is, to a certain extent, the best thing you're going to get to a get out of jail free card. You have no way to heal yourself, and that is by far one of the big differences between Juno and almost every other support other than Zenyatta. Every other support has an ability that will heal them to some extent or cleanse them, and Juno does not have that, which means that if you are getting hit, the only thing that you have to rely on is disengaging, waiting 2.5 seconds for your passive to kick in, and then re-engaging. So you can totally play around that though. And that is where your speed boost and your glide comes from. Your glide boost is going to allow you to do the majority of your resetting. It's on a fairly short cooldown, so you can use it fairly liberally. You can use it to get in or out of a position. And I would definitely say that it is best for getting out. Engaging with it and taking an angle is good, and I think you should. But you really want to make sure that you have it on cooldown before you're getting pushed. And that's where the main playstyle of Juno is. Your glide boost and your hyper ring are such valuable tools for yourself, but also for the team, because you have the mobility to rotate quicker than most characters. I should say you're about on par with your flankers, your Genjis, and your Tracers. A Tracer will definitely get away from you, but if you and a Tracer playing together, you're going to have a pretty similar tempo. You're going to be able to keep up. You're just not going to be able to go quite as far as her, and that's where the range you have on your primary fire kind of comes in. The previously mentioned Genji and Tracer, one of their biggest downsides is that they have a range issue. Genji has a little bit more poke, but both of them want to close the distance on their target as quickly as possible. They want to burst damage, and they want to get out. So for them, it's really, really important that they have a good setup. They don't take damage during their setup. They can get on their target and get out. Those are the things that your flankers want. Juno wants very similar things. She wants to set up in a position where she is not going to be taking a lot of damage, but is going to be able to do a good bit of healing and or damage to that flanker. And I found that is one of her best playstyles, especially in the current meta. Your speed ring in the current meta is for your tank, especially your diva, because everyone's playing diva right now. But you yourself have the ability to go in with your Tracer or Genji, take an angle like this, and pump them with healing or with a little damage on their target, help them win that 1v1, and then give them the speed boost to get out. That's your another option that you have. And that's where I would say a large majority of Juno's playstyle is. It's this kind of back and forth. You want to come in, preferably with somebody else, and however far they go, you want to stay, a good 10-20 meters away from them, preferably, just so that you have some space to disengage, because you don't have the same get out of jail free cards that other supports have. On top of that, you are just extremely punishable. You have good movement, but there's a lot of movement abilities in this game that can catch up to you or keep pace with you. So if you are deciding to leave this position after there's already a diva standing here, I'm sorry to say it, but you're dead. Or you should be dead if you have a competent diva that you're playing against. From here, even if I'm using my abilities to get back here, that diva is going to be right there. I mean, at best, I can run, I can shoot this, but I am now already wasting all of my cooldowns to make space. And that diva, whose, boosters is on, 3-4 second cooldown? She's going to be on top of me in no time. I'm going to have no cooldowns, and I'm going to have a diva in my face. Now, alternatively, I see diva pushing here. I'm already backing up. I'm already shooting. I'm already getting over here, right? Now, the diva can push up here. I have my speed ring ready. I can disengage. I can get over here, and I can keep rotating or, whatever the situation might be. And so the big thing with Juno is being extremely, I can't think of words right now. You have to be extremely proactive. You have to take a look at how everything's going, and you have to move regardless of how things actually go. So let's say the diva was on pushing the bridge, and I move over here. I might not be in as good of a position to deal damage or support, but I can always re-engage pretty quickly, right? I can get back over here if things change. And me going over here didn't really hurt my team too much. Hopefully my team's down here, or over here, right? So I still have a great vantage point on all of my teammates. I've just preemptively seen, okay, I need to move because I have the mobility to get over here, but I don't have the mobility to get over here after there's already somebody on top of me. And so we've kind of already nailed a couple of things about the playstyle. She has to be really, really proactive with her ability usage. The speed ring, right? You want to be putting the speed ring behind your tank or on your tank here in the choke before they're already dead. Because I found too, after people have that speed, it sort of like is a little bit of a wake up. They're like, okay, am I pushing or am I backing up? It gives them that, oh, I'm fast. Where do I go? Right? So you have to give them the speed beforehand so that they have that little bit of time to make that decision. And if they decide, oh, I'm gonna go in, you know what? Maybe give them a little support, but just because they made the wrong call doesn't mean you have to push in behind them, right? So you have to be proactive about your positioning. You have to use your tools proactively for your team. And you also have to be really, really careful with how you set up, because you want to try to not take a lot of damage, just like a flanker. The one difference I would say I'd like to note there is that you have the 2.5 second cooldown on your passive. It's 5 seconds for your Tracer or Genji, right? So when they have to pull out of the fight to reset, they have to wait for their passive to kick in. They're waiting 5 seconds, maybe longer, before they can re-engage, right? You have the ability to do something that they don't, which is just quickly remove yourself, start regen, and pop back in. So you have to manage your life really carefully, and you do that through your positioning. And I've already kind of talked about a couple of pairings, but I think that that's kind of important, so we'll go into it a little further. Your Genjis, your Tracers, your Echoes, all of your flankers, you can play with them really effectively, but as I had already mentioned, you can't go all the way in for them, or I should say with them. This isn't a great map, and I think I'm gonna just throw us in a different map real quick so that I can show something off. There's actually a pretty good, there's a pretty good example I have here. It's just from a game the other day, and I think it just showed it off really well. I wish I would have saved the clip, but I didn't, but I can recreate it for you all. We had a Tracer on our team, and I was playing Juno. We rolled out here on the left side with some speed. We both quickly got over here. We went through this door, and if you know how flankers play, they want to try to stay on the edges of the map mainly. So on these maps, push maps especially, that are symmetrical, you have your left and you have your right. So typically, with a flanker, if you're playing against another flanker, you have two options. You're either gonna pick a side and you're gonna run into them, and you're gonna have a little bit of a flanker battle over here, or you're gonna end up over here. Maybe both flankers went over here and battling, or there's gonna be the mirror where they went one side and you went the other. However, the game we were playing, Tracer and I got here. We both waited, reset. The Tracer that now, without a Juno, is trying to come through here. Boom, I dash out, Tracer dashes out, I'm shooting this way, the Tracer is shooting from this angle. Their Tracer was evaporated in about 2 seconds. Now they're down one, Tracer and I can push in from a new angle, and we can act like a little unit. So, in that example right there, I pushed in with the Tracer, but then I let the Tracer make the space, go out the door, and then I'm following out the door, right? So I'm letting my Tracer make the space, and then I'm filling in, taking a new angle that I can do damage and healing from, and I'm going to force the enemy to turn to me. So rotation is the key. Rotation is the key. So is Juno good? I'd have to say yes. The main problem that I think she has, as of right now, is that her play isn't exactly clear. We divide supports up into main and flex supports, right? And Juno, I guess, is a flex support, right? But she doesn't pair with other flex supports the best. Man, I'm lagging. Um, she doesn't pair with the best, the main supports the best, or flex supports the best. She kind of just has matchups that are better and matchups that are worse. And I think that Juno is the first support that I would say doesn't fit into that classification very well. And I think that's been a hard thing for people to play around, is that Juno is Juno. She can dive, as we've sort of talked about, the way that she can dive. She can brawl really well. From an angle like this, I can sit over here and I can pump my team with healing, and I can quickly shoot over here and pump the enemy team with damage. And as my team pushes around, I can almost just stand behind them and sit here and do damage, like we talked about previously. It still is a super viable strategy, and it allows her to be pretty brawly, because I can, in the same burst, I can even do damage and healing. I can give my speed ring, I can push with the team and just stay behind them, quickly taking off angles like this, doing some damage, but staying right here where I can heal my team, I can do damage, I can heal my team, I can do damage. So, you have to play, I almost would just clarify Juno as a flanking support. She plays like a flanker that also can do healing. And I think that's about it. You need to look at her less like a full support and more like somebody that can do damage and keep people alive in the short term. There's a lot more text I would love to cover, but at this point I feel like I've been letting this run on a little too long. So let's get the conclusion together, right? In conclusion, I think Juno is good. She has great speed, damage, the ability to position, and all of those things tied together means that you're able to stay on top of the rotation of the map. And if you know about it, can focus on the clock positioning. That right there is the thing. You want to just be running circles around people and trying your very best to stay on the edges of battle where you can have a good angle on both your enemy and your team. So, I hope that this video has been somewhat informative, that Juno has had a little bit of up and down, but the biggest misconception of her was simply her playstyle. People weren't sure how to play her, they weren't sure how her movement worked, they didn't know you could do cool stuff like this yet. And what that all led to was her feeling underpowered. And after the damage changes, I would say she is an A+ hero. And I think that's going to remain. I think no matter what, she's going to have the ability to take angles and force for space, and give up space and bait people in a way that other supports can't. So, I hope you enjoyed the video. Have a great evening, morning, afternoon, and I hope to see you on the next one. Ciao!